Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad that you're here, whether you're in person at the Austin Area Urban League or online via Zoom. And we definitely want to give a big thank you to the Austin Area Urban League for their hospitality and letting us have our event here. It is a great venue, and we're happy to be here. My name is Claudia Barlow, and I am an Impact Austin board member as well as a member of our learning committee, which is hosting this event today. And I'm really happy to welcome you. Impact Austin is a women's collective giving organization that provides grants to nonprofits in the Central Texas area. Over the last 20 years, we've provided 117 grants, totaling nearly $8.5 million to 94 organizations. And we've also cultivated over 2,900 female philanthropists. We're a learning organization, and we really focus on educating our members on community needs and solutions. And we host learning events like this one throughout the year, where you can learn about things like our community, philanthropy, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Our next learning event will be in early 2024. It's our Discovery Day, which is an annual event, and you'll be able to learn more about that over the next couple of months on social media and on our website. We hope to see you there as well. If you're interested in exploring some of our past learning events, they are available on our website and via our YouTube channel. Today, we're here to discuss civic engagement. We know that every election matters, and engaging both before and during elections is really critical. We have a great group of experts here to talk to us about voting, about civic engagement, how we can get better informed, and how we can mobilize others to get involved. Our moderator for today's panel is Eric Bird. Eric is the president of the Black Professional Alliance. He's also the acting president of the Man in Me, an organization that promotes healthy fatherhood. And he's the owner of Vision, Innovation, and Management, where he consults on equity-focused transformations in areas like child welfare, criminal justice, environmental justice, and affordable housing. So Eric, a busy guy. We're really grateful he's here today to moderate our panel. We also have Shelley Baker from Next Gen America, Amy Stansberry from the Austin Common, and Yvonne Davis from Organizing for Action. And they'll introduce themselves in just a moment. Before I turn it over to Eric, please note that in the last 10 to 15 minutes of our session today, we will open it up for questions and answers. So please be ready with the questions for our panelists. We'll have a microphone available for those of you who are in the room and for those of you online, and you can put those questions in the chat and we will pass those on to our panelists. Also wanted to let you know that we have lunch in the back of the room for those of you who are here in person. You're either welcome to eat now or take it with you when you go. The bathroom codes are right there. Thank you, Jerica. Please make note of that before you head to the bathroom so you can actually get in the door. At the end of the session, we would love for you to provide your feedback. Here in the room, we have QR codes around the room. Online, we'll put the link to the survey in the chat later, but please do take just a couple minutes to answer some questions about the event so that we can continue to improve and incorporate your feedback. Thank you all very much, and I will pass it on to Eric.
Thank you. Thank you. It's definitely an honor to be here, and I really appreciate the audience for attending and taking time out of your schedules to be here and support Impact Austin. And our amazing panelists, and we're going to learn more about them. Thank you for the introduction. To add, I think one important piece of information that no one gets lost is I'm a native Austinite.
Right.
Some people call that a unicorn. But yeah, I'm a native Austinite, born and raised here, and actually went to middle school around the corner at Dover. So yeah, but I do travel, so I don't just stay in Austin. I do get around. And I was traveling a few years ago with my dad. We went to Philly. It was my first time in Philadelphia. Of course, I had to choose to stay in things. But we also went to City Hall and looked at all of the statues and things. There was this amazing statue of this powerfully standing Black man, his chest out, with his arms back. And his name was Octavius Cato. And so my dad, you know, he's a nerd like me. And so he asked me, do you know who this is? Of course, this is my first time there. So he told me, Octavius Credo was a Black civil rights activist, baseball player, who was killed on voting day. So he went to vote on October 10th, 1871. And he was killed by a white supremacist. So voting is important. It's important enough for people to try to stop us in our tracks. And that was about 150 years ago. And now we're still trying to encourage people to vote. We're still trying to educate the masses about the importance of voting and civic engagement. And so I want to ask the audience, how many of you are civically engaged? How many of you do things outside of voting to promote awareness? Or whatever causes you to leave. So we have a very engaged audience. That's good to know. So I'm going to turn it over to our panelists and have them introduce themselves. We can start. Thank you.
Hey everyone. Hey everyone. My name is Amy Stansbury. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Austin Common. We're a local news site and civic education organization here in Austin, and really our whole focus is trying to make local government more accessible, engaging, relevant to people who traditionally haven't been involved in local politics before. So we heavily focus on younger people and do a lot on social media. So we try and create interesting and creative ways. We work with artists to make illustrated news stories, to make videos, and try and infuse a little bit of what's happening at City Hall into like a normal 20 or 30 something news feed, right? And really trying to also do outreach to the community to get more folks involved around elections too. So we do Civics 101 talks, and we go to universities and social clubs. We'll go to bars, beer leagues, anyone that will have us, and talk for a little bit about, this is Austin, this is your mayor, this is your council member, this is the upcoming election, and explaining some of that. So really just trying to make everything a little bit more fun and accessible so that more people can get involved in our local democratic process. And that's kind of the level that gets left out the most.
Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Yvonne Davis, and I'm what we call a newly retired forever volunteers. Once you retire, people think that you're available to do everything. But for 20 years, I served as the Central Texas manager of public affairs for LCRA. And in that role, I was responsible for the LCRA's relationship with the city of Austin. We had two large entities that I was responsible for, which is Austin Energy and Austin Water. And along the time of the, the year before I retired, it was a turning point in my life because I had long time represented them with energy, environmental, but the voice changed. And the voice changed with another election. And that voice wasn't consistent with me or who I thought I wanted to be. So sometimes in our lives, we are forced to, we come to grips with who we are and who the company says they are. And so I thought, you know what? I've been talking about this for a long time, and now I'm going to be able to use my voice. So I became involved in Organizing for America. And that was very partisan. You know who that person was. But I was chosen as one of the 77 leaders to represent our then president. And after he left office, they formed Organizing for Action. And Organizing for Action is just that organization that goes out there and makes things happen for our neighborhoods, our communities, or even our nation if called upon to do so. In addition to that, I also represent as a national president of, the coordinator of our National Trends and Services for the Austin chapter of the Leagues. We are involved in voter education, voter registration, voter involvement, all those activities that has to do with voter and voter engagement, but predominantly our voices for the African American community. I could go on and on about what I'm involved in, But one thing that I have learned over the years is my engagement started with my grandparents. Started with my grandparents who handed it to my parents, and we hopefully handed it to our child. Now I have a 4-year-old granddaughter. She is in Austin. She has less rights than I have. So that's my impetus for making a change and making a difference in the Austin we want to see. And not only the Austin, but the Texas. I'm a 4th-generation Texan. I never thought about moving out of Texas until maybe this last year. So that's who I am.
Hi, my name is Shelley Baker and I am the Texas Organizing Director for Next Gen America. Next Gen America is one of the largest youth civic engagement organizations in the country. We've been in Texas for about 2 years now, and in our work in Texas is focused on nonpartisan youth voter registration and civic engagement. So we have engaged, I think, over 1.2 million youth since we've been in Texas. A lot of our work is focused on primarily college campuses, and we are, you said earlier, like bars, sometimes different areas, because even though youth are primarily on college campuses, they're also everywhere else as well. We also do a lot of work with high schools. Our mission is to really just make sure that our local, state, and national governments are responsive to one of the largest and most diverse generations in our country's history. We're seeing a lot of attacks on the rights, voting rights, especially centered around young folks and young folks of color and young folks of varying identities. And we just try to mobilize youth by also creating youth leaders, by making sure we have youth in our leadership, making sure that we are hiring organizers from those communities, hiring organizers that the youth can relate to and talk to them about, since we're nonpartisan, engage youth, have conversations with them, ask them what they're interested in, ask them what they're passionate about, and provide them information on why their voice is important, because they keep, unfortunately, especially in Texas, keeping the message that their voice doesn't matter and their voice isn't important, and they see kind of the results of things and feel defeated. So our job is to keep just making them feel empowered, showing them that their voice does matter, and even if it's just casting a vote, it does make a difference, especially on a local and state level.
Thank you. So first question, what trends are we seeing in participation of both voting and civic engagement? Who's participating and also who's not? And this question is open to any panelists.
Well, through the work that I've been involved in, and Travis County level, we need to know what precincts are voting and which precincts are not. I happen to live. This is something that people fail to understand about Austin. I'm African American, but I don't live in East Austin. Never have lived in East Austin. But my culture identifies in East Austin, so that makes me feel compelled to be a part of that. One of the areas that has the least participation of voting is in precinct 1, and we know that. And we can look at the numbers and compare that to my precinct, which is in Southwest Austin. And I don't need to do voter registration in my community. I don't need to get out the vote. I mean, we can't even, it's lines and lines of early voting. But my engagement in the need is for precinct 1 and those precincts for low voting precincts. And I think we overlook that.
I can take this. So my organization primarily focuses on youth voter turnout. And the good news is over the last 3 years, we've seen a trend of increased youth voter participation, which is really amazing. However, when we narrow down in Texas, and I live in Houston, by the way, sorry, so I forgot to mention that. But when we narrow down to Texas and looking at Texas as a state, we're seeing I think like lower levels of participation compared nationally, even though it is on the rise in Texas, even though we are seeing more and more youth participate. Obviously, there are things that like are barriers to voting for youth. I know last year in Austin, I remember or there was like lines like on election day, like very, very long lines, which is great, right? You see all these students coming out to vote, but it's also not so great because why are they having to stay in these really long lines to go vote? And I'm sure there were people that you had to go to class. Or maybe, you know, we're like, man, I don't know if it's hot. We're just gonna assume it was hot. Move to Texas, you know, maybe like, hey, you know, this isn't really the move. I know that has been struggles getting polling locations that are accessible to young folks, are accessible to certain communities. There's been a lot of confusion with mail-in ballots and stuff for students that might move out of the county or out of the state, or students that say, I'm gonna drive home and go vote. Okay. You know, and they're even like my favorite is parents that insist that their students stay registered in a county that's like 3 or 4 hours away and they have that. But overall, like we are seeing increased participation, which is why it's even more important for us to like continue to invest in voter participation and make it more accessible.
So, you know, I think the Austin Women, we do a lot of work on like city elections, the smallest level elections that tend to get like 0 attention or coverage. And it's like what we have seen, one of the big trends we've seen or consistently happens is even elections where there's big voter turnout for governor or presidential election, by the time you get to the bottom of the ballot, those voter numbers really drop off dramatically. And so you have like, I do a lot of presentations around town with young people, and it's like, you can see the data of, you know, our last mayoral election, I think, you know, the one where Mayor Adler was elected, I think 13% of people total voted in that election, and less than 5% of that was people under the age of 30, even though that's one of the largest demographic groups in our city. And in this past election, when Mayor Watson was elected, pretty similar numbers. It was a little higher, but I think it was still like 17 or 18% total, and really low participation from young people. And one of the big things you see is that in Austin, we have a runoff system. And so the numbers change pretty dramatically from November to December. So in November, you get better voter turnout in those elections and better range, you know, a more accurate demographic representation of people who are voting in that election. But then runoffs happen like mid-December. If you're in college, you've left already. People are, you know, have other things going on in their lives. The last thing you want to do is like go back to vote sometimes. And the numbers really tank. And also they flip, you know, so you can start to see the largest demographic groups by far are, you know, 65 and up. And it just kind of like the reverse thing happens than what happened in the general election. And it's those runoffs that really ultimately decide who our mayor is and most of our city council every year, because we don't have primaries. And so everyone, you know, sometimes in an election for city council or mayor in Austin, you have 8 people running. No one is going to get more than 50% of the vote needed in order to avoid that runoff. And so that's like a big gap, an area where we've tried to spend a lot of focus, and I think a lot of focus, you know, if you're looking for ways to volunteer and get engaged, is like that time period in between the general and the runoff is where you really get a big fall off in voter turnout. And it, you know, it has big consequences, obviously, for our city. We're a city of 1 million people, and for these people, you know, when these people get elected, they can serve for 8 years once they're in. So it's significant.
I'm wondering if that is unique to Austin, like our runoff system and the drop off, or is it, you know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and you can time it too. I mean, that's kind of what we see everywhere. And there's a really good study. I love it. It's a few years old now, but I reference it a lot. It's called the Who Votes for Mayor Project. I think it was out of Portland State University, it's probably like 10 years old, but the numbers are pretty similar, we haven't seen a big change. It's really cool, I definitely recommend checking it out, they have a good website, and I think they went through the biggest 50 or maybe even 100 cities in the country. And they looked at who was actually voting in that final determinate mayoral election. Both their ages, the parts of the city where they're being represented, the gap in between the median voter age and the median age of someone who lives in the city. And you can see it across everywhere. I mean, this is pretty common. Not every city has a runoff system like we do, a lot do, but that certainly impacts it some. Which is why, there's been debates if we should change that system, and an instant runoff, but those things have not happened yet. But.
I can definitely comment on this. I moved to Houston in 2019. I'm originally New Orleans native, so I have deep love for Gulf Coast cities. But yeah, and I remember the election in 2019 in Houston was mayoral and city council, and that was a time where we were seeing across the country just a lot of people running for office. And I mean, there were like 12 people running for every seat. It was insane. This year, there's not as many, and I'm actually a little happy. Like, there's like a couple, like four, maybe like 3, 4, 5. But like, I remember that year, like each city council, it was like 10, 15. It was, and yeah, it went into a runoff, and like all these races went into a runoff election. And I was hired. I was there as an organizer, working with the AFL-CIO, and I remember like my contract ended like the end of December, and this runoff was like 2 weeks prior, which even like the organizing structure isn't really set up for runoffs. That's like another conversation for another day. But like a lot of times, even funding, even folks that are out here doing this work, just because it's their job, like the cycle is supposed to end election day, and it's hard when it doesn't. Usually by then we're exhausted. And yeah, there's already predictions that Houston's races are gonna also end up in a runoff this year, and the challenges that might bring. That same study you were talking about, the Houston Chronicle, there's like something about like the half of the voters were like 60, over the age of 60 in mayoral race, which is, I live in Houston, I promise you that like half the people there are not 60. So like, yeah, that was a jarring number, and it was, the good thing about it was floating around social media for like a week, a lot of it kind of generated some buzz. So it's nice when there's this research and it goes out there and people are talking about it, but then like, what do we do about it?
Yeah, great question. What can we do about it? If the people, because we're talking about civic engagement, if the people decide that they want to change the runoff system, what steps can they take? Is this a city council vote? Is this a state decision?
That's complicated, actually. I mean, there's this, I'll just say, like, it's a whole thing, like, the runoff system, in Austin, we actually took a vote to see if we would go to what's like an instant runoff or ranked choice voting, they call it, and we did approve that, but it hasn't been implemented because maybe it's legal in Texas or maybe it's not. It's like up for debate. And the idea, this is like, and this is still an active debate in the world, but like there's some cities that are switching to this idea of doing an instant runoff or ranked choice voting, where when you go to the ballot box and vote on election day, you would literally rank the candidates 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they're able to, that way they don't have to bring you back. So if your first choice person doesn't make it to the top, your votes get redistributed. There's a whole system behind it. That's one method. Another, it's a shame because it is nice. I'm not gonna like bash on the whole city council system, because it is nice that you get, it allows a lot of candidates to run from all different backgrounds, and you don't have this like primary system that a lot of people hate, right? Where it just feels like you don't really get to choose who you want to run, but the timing of it is important.
I imagine it'd be like, I agree, like our state elections are also based off our runoff. So like I could see there being some challenges or issues about it, local entities, just based on my time in Texas. Were to change that, because like also again, even if they were, there's a state election, the state election is gonna go into runoff, but I will say. If that were to change, it would save everyone lots and lots and lots of money, like a lot of money. The money piece is like, I think beyond like functionality, if people care about saving money, whether it's candidates or local entities that have to run elections. That is probably one of the biggest, I think, selling points of you know, looking into that system. Because, you know, like the cost runoffs is, yeah, it's a lot of money to just keep elections going and going, and it also can delay, you know, delay the work and delay like that transition that happens, when, you know, people are leaving office and coming in.
I think we like to save money, right? Before we move on from voting, are there any other barriers, keeping people from voting, accessibility, was COVID a factor?
I think I would like to say that we focus a lot on that voting, and we always should. But we wait until the election day and we decide, oh gosh, I'm gonna go to East Austin. Let me just use that as an example, because I think come up a lot in Austin. And start, you know, telling people about it. What we need to be doing is developing relationships and keep them ongoing long before an election. Because when people do not vote, they're not voting simply because they don't want to. There are barriers there that we need to know about, and if we are in a position to do something about it, let's do it. You grew up in Austin, and I've been in Austin maybe 40 years, and having the connection to Austin, although I live in Southwest, and we always did, we went to church in East Austin. But one of the saddest things to us and to people who are my friends, who are African Americans, when they come through East Austin to go to church, it's very sad. Now, it may look like a thriving community, a really hip hop community, but for some of us, it's very sad when we're going to worship. And why is that? It's gentrification. It's taken away a lot of our culture. Simple things like where you go to the beauty shop, where you go to the barber shop, where you took your kids to the library, if they wanted to learn something about their history. Those are things you have to know before you start engaging voters, because maybe there's something deep down that they feel like, why should I vote? Nobody cares about my votes. Or you vote on things like the ranked choice and other things, and it never gets implemented. I hear that a lot. Why aren't we holding our local people accountable? Well, and you're looking for a way to get engaged, is in some of those issues that come up long before November or long before March, because you need to be involved in that from the ground. If you care, it's like where you are. What can I do to even change the needle a little bit? It's developing relationships with people who share your values that may be different from you.
I'll just add on really quick, speaking of engaging year round. That's a big piece of feedback we get when we are working with younger folks doing these Civics 101 workshops. A big comment is, you know, if you just learn that who your city council member is like 3 days before the election, or what a county commissioner is, or what they even do, then it's very difficult to then make a choice and vote 3 days later, right? Because you're like, I don't know enough. I don't know anything about this person. It's so disconnected from me. So working on building up that knowledge, that understanding in advance makes it a lot easier. Then you don't have to, furiously open up a guide and be like, I don't know. You already know. You know who these people are. They represent you. You have a relationship with them. You know if you like your representative or you don't, right? That's the goal, trying to get there.
And another thing is, if you know candidates, please tell candidates, don't come to my church when you're running for election. Okay? We go to church to worship, not to campaign. Respect that sacred place. get to know the voters, get to know people who are potential voters long before you start running for office. Because there's nothing like someone coming in, wearing their campaign pin, when you're going through a crisis, your parents are elderly, or, you came there to get prayed for being sick or something. That's the last thing you want to see, is somebody running for judge. And usually they know that they're coming to, I'm just gonna keep it real, they're coming to a Black church, so all of them come together. No, don't do it. And you can help now. You know somebody who's running for office, tell them that is the most offensive thing that they could ever do.
Let's stay on the topic of engagement. Outside of voting, what are other ways that people can become engaged? We got a very engaged audience. So we'll ask you what ways you're engaged afterwards, but what are some ways that people can become engaged civically?
I think this was touched on, but I'll be very specific. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think that, it's very when people give their time, when folks give their time to they're gonna start hard, they have a schedule or a lifestyle that allows them to volunteer, that is amazing. But the reality is this requires paid work. This is organizing is a skill. It is a profession. And there's a reason why, because that's what we do. We're very good. And I think that the people that we're trying to reach deserve that quality level of engagement. And it's early investment. I know that people enjoy giving their time, and that is not that's not overlooked. But the reality is funding early investment into communities, funding, not just waiting until before a presidential election year, no, family donate to that local organization. Donate every year, early investment. And also if you're trying to turn out the vote in a community where maybe your identity doesn't really match, please just give money. Your time again is valuable, but the best folks to engage communities are the people from that communities. And if you invest in organizations that are doing that work, that are from that communities, that can relate to their identities and experiences, that is going to have a bigger impact than someone that is not from that community going out. Let's be honest. And it does not mean that your heart's not in a good place. It doesn't mean that your time and your you taking initiative is not valued. It's just, if we're talking about impact and actually having an impact, sometimes giving money is the way to do it. And there's times to give your time as well. But I say listen to the people on the ground, listen to people in the communities, and they'll tell you what they need. They'll tell you, hey, I need some volunteers. Hey, I need some services. Hey, I need some discounts, or hey, I need some money, whatever it may be. So just listen to the folks that are doing the work, listen to their needs. When you want to engage, and instead of just I guess assuming or just showing up.
I think that's important personally. I think people are subject matter experts in their own experience. They know themselves. And so if you don't have it, just like you said, to fit in one of those categories, just listen. It's the easiest thing to do. And then you're money.
But also you have to place yourself in a position to listen. If you never get out of your circle, you're gonna get people who look and see people just like you. But it's important for you to, as an individual, whatever is comfortable for you, or maybe whatever is not comfortable for you. See things, get in a position where you can see things differently. And then of course, if you buy into whatever that organization is offering, maybe you are not the face of that issue. Maybe, someone else is, but you can support it.
Yeah, I'll say, locally, I'm a big fan of trying to get, more people engaged in some of the big levers that, are constantly impacting how our local government works. There's actually quite a lot of opportunities to influence local government. It's a very accessible level of government. You can walk into City Hall and meet a council person. But the folks that tend to do that are not representative of our city, right? And so trying to expand those opportunities out. So I always, like to kind of frame things like if you have 5 minutes a week to give, if you have an hour, or if you have like, maybe an hour to a month. If there's all different ways to get engaged. I always say like if you only have a few minutes a week, like just follow your council person and the mayor on social media and maybe one nonprofit that you really like that does activist work in the community. Just follow them, just start to be aware of what they're up to. Even that is a step in the right direction, right? You're starting to understand who these people are representing you, what issues come up in the city. If you have a little bit more time, fill out a city survey every once in a while. The city loves surveys. It can feel a little silly sometimes, but someone is looking at them on the other end, and council is using those surveys to justify their decisions, and they put them out for everything. Should we build what should the playground look like at the new park we're gonna build down the street? Should we put a new stop sign here, or should we put a new stop sign here? What should the bike lanes look like? They're constantly doing this. And so just spending the 5 minutes to answer that survey can have a big impact as well. And then if you have a little bit more time, I always recommend folks go to a council meeting and bring a friend with you who's never been. You don't have to say anything, you don't even have to do anything, just show up and go. And start to get a vibe for what the place is like, what's going on there, and make yourself more comfortable with the experience. And then the big one is serving on city boards and commissions. I talk about this all the time, but these are like the big levers of our local government. They meet about once a month. We have dozens of them on every topic, from animals to arts to music to bikes to sidewalks. It's volunteer, so it's a time commitment. But if you can swing it, it's a really great way to basically these commissions advise city council on all these topics. And they do have a lot of input, and the people who are in them, it tends to be the same people over and over. And those people are great, they're volunteering their time, like they're doing the hard work. It is not easy, but there's a lot of opportunity for new voices, I think, to get involved in that effort. So seriously consider it, or even just show up at a board or commission meeting every once in a while at a topic you care about, and start to develop a relationship that can have a big impact. I've talked to people who, after filling out a city survey, got, this one woman I know got a stop sign on her street. Like, that is a win. And when we think about in politics today, and you're just frustrated and you're reading the news all the time and you're so angry, like sometimes it can be helpful to be like, what can I do right here in my community? And she did that, right? So you can look at that stop sign every day and say, okay, I feel like I made my community safer. Like, the world is not totally broken. And so I think looking at that, like, what can I do right here is a helpful way. And then you build skills and can expand.
Awesome. So audience, you are a very active and engaged audience. How many of you are active by becoming more aware and participating and becoming engaged? All right. And how many of you put yourself in uncomfortable places to learn more and engage with people you normally wouldn't have? Okay. And how many of you lean on the people with the expertise, the people who are experiencing what may be going on, and give them? So last question, it's, we're getting a lot of information, we're learning a lot. Thank you so much. This has been a great panel. For those in the audience and those online, what resources can we use? Like, how can we learn more? Where do we go next? What are the next steps?
Well, if you want to learn more about NextGen, you go to nextgenamerica.org. We have tons of resources about like things that we do, and we have an amazing distributed team. And that distributed is like making calls and text. And believe it or not, like, I've made calls myself. And I don't know, we have a really good team because I actually talk to voters. We also, have other ways to get involved. I'm also on the board of the League of Women Voters, and they always have a really great voters guide. And so I would say, like, if you're talking about resources as far as like where is a way that I can like share like and it's nonpartisan as well, which is really nice. And I'm not very familiar with the Austin League of Women Voters, but I'm sure they're amazing. Yeah, I would say they tend to have really good voters guide, and you know, they try really hard to make them accessible to folks. So if you're looking for like a really like I think they create one of the best comprehensive voters guides in most areas that I've seen. I could be wrong, but I would say that's a good start to kind of, I would say, is if you're looking for resources. But another thing is kind of what's already been said is don't sleep on these small like local organizations. They have a lot of knowledge and they may not have like the flashy websites or big social media presence, but I would say like start on like a very local community level. If there's a community or organization or group that you're interested in helping on an issue, like talk to the people that are impacted the most, ask them questions, get to know that community a little bit, and they'll tell you what you need, and you'll actually get connected with folks that, you know, are doing the work and finding ways to support them. I know it was mentioned earlier, like, you know, instead of just yourself maybe volunteering for a board, maybe talking to someone who maybe that wouldn't be accessible to, or maybe brainstorming some ideas, maybe give them a ride, you know, something like that. Like those are things that you can do to really like I say get creative. I know sometimes we look to ourselves like what can I do more, but maybe like look at what you can do more to support someone else doing more, right? And that made me like, yeah, like, hey, this person really wants to serve on this city board, maybe I can write, or like, hey, maybe I make sure I have a QR code on my phone, so if I'm at the grocery store checking out, I'm like, here, take the city survey, you know, I don't know. And it might be uncomfortable, but you know, hey, even if you do it for one or two people, like it really does have an impact. And it also helps you share the resources and knowledge that you're learning, not just with your own circle, but folks outside of them. So.
Well, I certainly sing the praises of the League of Women Voters, and I think the people in Austin would tell you that the Austin League is the Texas League of Women Voters. But in addition to that, don't overlook the nonprofit organizations that are out there doing the work. I kind of think of Austin Justice Coalition, because they take the League of Women Voters guides. And one of the things that he did during the presidential election, I think was, I might be mistaken, but put a lens on it for people of color and to see how that impacts. And I would really like to see the league take that on and integrate themselves with what the work that the Austin Justice Coalition has done on that topic. Because if our goal is to increase voter participation, we need to make sure that we are a voice talking to those people. And it's talking directly with the person who is most impacted. And the other thing I'd say is don't overlook the Divine Nine. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? It's 9 groups of fraternities and sororities. And they're predominantly Black organizations. And we are not, I'm a member of the Divine Nine, I'm an Alpha Kappa Alpha woman, but we are not some a sorority type that, you know, parties. After college, we have a responsibility to get back in our community. And one of the ways that we get back is through voting. And every one of those organizations has that same commitment. And as I said, I'm a member of the Austin, Texas chapter of the Link. It's not a sorority, but we are a philanthropic women's organization. In order to be a part of that group, you are mandated to volunteer so many hours and you have to give back your money. But the Divine Nine should never be overlooked. I'm sure that you have met some African-American man or woman, even in Austin, who is a member of the Divine Nine. And if they are, then their dad probably was, or their mother probably was, and their children were. So that is a great network for you to, you know, ask your friends and ask them, can I tag along with you? Or if you're in an organization, collaborate with a member of the Divine Nine or the Links on voting, or you know, some other charitable thing that you want to do. But I caution you, collaborate. Don't try to go in and say, I know it all. Because it is their organization, and maybe there's a way that you can work together for the common good.
Yeah, I think, I like the emphasis on being creative with it. I do think sometimes there's this tendency for civic engagement to seem boring and like a chore or a job. But I'm a big fan of trying to make it more social, like especially since everyone here is someone who's engaged, you're taking the time out of your day to come to this, but like bring your friends next time, invite them into it, make it fun, go out to lunch first, and then come to do something like this, right? Like reach out to and invite people and really try and welcome them and make them feel included in these spaces as well. I think is a big part of it, especially maybe you are someone who goes to City Hall and your friend would never go speak up at a meeting by themselves because they'd be too nervous. Well, agree to go with them, right? Or invite them to it and make them more comfortable in the situation. I think can help a lot and be fun. Like I've seen people sing at city council meetings, like wear funny shirts, make cool posters. Like you can make it fun and engaging. It doesn't have to be a boring chore all the time. I'll say like a plug for the Austin Common. We have if you're a social media person, we do a lot on social media, especially on Instagram. You can follow us at the Austin Common. We do a lot of short 90-second videos, illustrated guides on all those local races that are on the ballot, explaining like what they are, what they're about, and then also just what's happening at City Council on a weekly basis and how you can get involved in it. We also do these Civics 101 talks. We have these little zines, little booklets, Beginner's Guide to Local Government. So if you are, if you know someone who would like to invite us in and do these, if you're in an office, any kind of social club or community, a book club or whatever, you can always reach out to me. We love to come and do that kind of stuff and work with folks around how to be more engaged in that way too.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks again to our panelists. We're going to turn to our audience for questions.
In thinking about local engagement, I think about hyperlocal. We have school boards, we have mud boards, we have HOA boards. How in the world do you educate people about all those levels and the impact that the decisions those groups make have on their lives?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot louder than my other one. I think that one thing that I've noticed is interesting about some of like the neighborhood associations or the MUDs and things that are really local is that, I mean, just different generations just communicate in completely different universes. And I think that's a big part of the problem, like, right? Like sometimes you'll talk to someone and they'll be like, we put out the notification and we let everyone know and no one came to the meeting. And it's like, and then you talk to someone else and they're like, I had no idea this meeting was happening tonight. I would never know. So I think, and again, it's like, you can't be expected to know how to communicate to other generations, but bringing on someone to help who is of that generation can be helpful in thinking about, okay, do we need to be sharing this information in other places or in other ways than we traditionally have, especially like if our neighborhood is changing, if there's more young people moving in or whatever. Also, like conversely to that, in neighborhoods, like a good old fashioned flyer, at the door, I think it's still the best way to go about it. And so many people, I think, are craving that community and getting to know their neighbors, but there's not a lot of mechanisms to do it. And like, we just don't like knock on each other's doors and introduce ourselves anymore. But I think that's like a component of it. There's a good organization here in town called We're All Neighbors. They operate in North Austin, and they've been doing a lot of this work and around resiliency too, and thinking about community resiliency and know your five. So knowing the 5 people who live in the houses directly, like the 2 next to you and the 3 across from you, and kind of making that a community challenge, and also working together as a neighborhood to solve problems even more locally, because sometimes like an issue is first council. Sometimes it's so local, like maybe you and your neighbors can just figure it out together, right? And get it done quicker and faster and get to know each other and be thinking of organizing in that way. So that's an organization I would also look into. We're All Neighbors, and they have some good resources about how to do that, like super hyper local organizing here in town. And also definitely reach out to me. I love to do little stuff too, to think about how we can make muds and puds or whatever seem cool.
I just had the question, what is muds and puds? Can you explain what those are, please? Sorry.
Yeah, they're just like utility districts, municipal utility districts, public utility districts. They're just like other little tiny micro forms of government, I think is like a way to think about it. And there are opportunities for people to influence them, but it tends to be like really, really small groups, like 3 or 4 people.
They can make big decisions about water.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you're concerned about the environment, I can tell you, after my years of experience, working with some of those muds and puds really impacted the water deal that we got in Austin.
Sure.
So,
I should
you
know
know,
the acronym, but-
you know,
Yeah. Totally fair.
Yeah.
So I have a question, there was. a Question about first of all, I'm Carol, I'm with the League of Women Voters in the Austin area, we have an Austin League. And we have a lot of leagues around us that we're growing because we've grown so big, Williamson County now has a league, so we're seeing that growth. But you mentioned about a lens, and I think of all the manipulation I do on photos with my iPhone. Okay, and you talked about the Austin Justice Coalition putting the lens of another cultural community onto a newsletter that we put out. How do we see what those lenses need to be across cultural divides? How do we see that among all the efforts that you all do?
well, the first thing is now you guys are engaged. Okay, you probably where I was when I decided I'm gonna live, and I'm gonna speak my voice, and I'm leaving this good paying job. You're now graduating, so you gotta walk into a space that you're not particularly comfortable with. And so that means that the league needs to make sure that women who look like me and this young lady and some representative of the Hispanic community, because that's who Austin is, make sure your league looks like Austin. And I can tell you this, I got bold enough, and I don't even know why I'm in this role. But I used to go to meetings and invited to meetings where I'm the only one in Austin, Texas that looks like me. I left some organizations, not because I don't agree with what they're doing. I am not gonna be your excuse for doing diversity, or I'm not it. So you have to make the hard choice, and it may be hard for you to go up to somebody and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'd like to meet you, I'm doing this, and we need your voice in the league. Or you come up to me after this meeting, or call me later, I'll tell you some people that you need to meet. But you've got to engage those women and engage them where they are. Don't set up a meeting at 5 o'clock or 2 o'clock and they work, or they're young mothers. So it's about being there for them when you can and engaging them as a partner.
And listening.
And listening, of course, yes, always.
I'm gonna second that, so I was like, yeah, approached, to be on the board of the league, like, and I'm very, very new and I'm learning, so I was like, I'm sure, like, how like the Austin League is, I know, I assumed it was, I'm still learning about, the work, that the league does, and I've always known about the voters guide is like, always like, every org was like, the voters guide, especially when we're talking about nonpartisan, information, but I'm gonna second that, like, have your league look like the city it's in, and I know that there sometimes are some struggles with that, mainly because people don't know, but like if you pursue someone, and I was pursued, and talk to them and invite them out and explain like, I mean, but I'm gonna admit there is a reputation sometimes that the league has with people in my age group and of my identity, and I think it's the voters guide is always a good thing, so everyone loves that. But outside of that, there is a reputation of what the league is and what they do. And I think sometimes, the best way to overcome that is, again, like, reaching out to folks that like maybe don't fit like the stereotypical view of like someone involved in the league is, and not just asking them to volunteer, not just asking them to come out and be a member, but putting them on your board. And building up that, like, not just like diversity as like ethnicity or identity, but even like age. And then you will get ideas on how to reach that lens. That's why I got on, they were like, you do youth voter engagement, like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. Please be on our board. Not, hey, can we meet with you, get your ideas and do it ourselves, right? So I'm learning a lot, like I'm learning a lot from them. I think they're learning something from me. And I'm seeing it, but it takes a while, and I will admit I did see some, resistance, not necessarily on the basis of we shouldn't be bringing people in. It's I think there is like traditions as far as like links of terms and things. So some ways to bring in that new blood is also like looking at like things that you would never think would impact diversity. But that do, or maybe weren't meant to impact it, like term links and like how long people can serve and like your exec board, like, the requirements to get on that. So sometimes like changing those requirements can bristle folks that have been doing this a long time. And I think the explanation is, hey, the reason why we're doing this is it's preventing us from bringing in new blood, from bringing in this like diversity, and it's not to like diminish their, passion or like take away from what they've been doing for years.
Thank you very much. Anyone, we have time for one last question. Anybody have a question?
Say something really quick. I don't even know.
Maybe you all like.
Oh. I just wanted to say really quick thank you. Like, I think everything that you guys said was incredibly fantastic. I do follow you on social media. And I spread the word because you do it in such a joyful way and a simple, easy, understandable soundbite way. So I know I can reach multi-generational people with it. And that's what I look for, and I'm engaged in a lot of different ways. So you do try to be sensitive, but when I walk in a room, I always say, where are younger people, right? How do you hold multi-generational people in? And I think it's really difficult to create that diversity, whether it's cultural or age, within groups, and it's something that we all just need to continue to focus on. Even when you're young, you need to think about where is everyone. So thank you for what you're doing. Continue to speak out. You've inspired me. And join Impact Austin.
Can I just say one thing? I learned this, in my job, when you, my real paying job. When you are faced with making a hard decision, like the impact of water on the city of Austin per se, that's for generations. But when you go through these series of meetings, some small, some large, one of the things when you walk in, before you even plan the meeting, you always say, who needs to be at the table? And so start to think about that. I'm going into this maybe a little group, but who needs to be at the table? And for me, that's always, rang loud for me. And when I go in the room and I'm like, okay, I don't see someone under 40, or I don't see a female, or I don't see people who look like me. I am a community leader, and I go into spaces where people don't know me, but I am confident enough to say, Lori, whoever is leading the meeting, Lord, this is not gonna work. We're not gonna get there because I need to hear the voices of the voices. And there's somebody missing in this room. So when you're going even to a meeting like this, look around. If there's no one there that reflects the Austin community, you have not succeeded in doing your job. And that is not on Impact Austin, that's on you as an individual. You have a responsibility and a commitment to make sure if we're to build a better Austin, build a better Texas, we have to hear every voice.
Well, that sounded like a pretty good wrap up there. Mic drop. All so much for being here and sharing your experience and your perspectives with us, and helping us all to be better informed, better engaged citizens, and to inspire and empower others to do the same. So thank you very much. Thank you for all of you who are here, both on Zoom and in the room. For those of you, for all of you, please do the survey. There is QR codes around the room, and there should be a link in the Zoom chat to access that. It's very short, so please take a few minutes. For those of you in the room, if you haven't already, please take some lunch with you. So thank you all very much. We look forward to seeing you at our next learning event.
Thank you.